Well, hi, folks, and welcome to the next episode of Naturally Adventurous. Been looking forward to recording our next episode. Charlie and I have really been enjoying doing this. We had a fun conversation with Phil last week.
Oh yeah.
Any updates on your side, Charlie? What you've been up to in the last week?
I've been continuing my writing work for the Merlin app, which I think we talked a little bit about in a previous episode. But it's kind of funny because, although I'm kind of stuck here in suburban Thailand, I'm actually writing at the moment about Philippine birds, a place that I know pretty well. And when you're reading about their habitats and their locations and stuff, it really takes you back to these places. So you can sort of get lost in these. I feel like I'm walking through the Philippine forests, and then I go down to my kitchen and make myself a sandwich or whatever. It's like a little bit of escapism, which is really quite fun.
Virtual travel. Yeah, writing is amazing.
Yeah.
I enjoy it, although it's like hard work in a way that nothing else is.
I do find that I need complete concentration for it. So I usually wake up at, well before dawn while the family is still sleeping and write a little bit and then, do all the regular stuff, doing dishes and cooking and stuff like that until everybody goes out and then do a bit more writing.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I've settled into exactly the same pattern. I wake up at around 5:30, and before anybody else is awake, I make a quick cup of coffee usually, and I go write for at least an hour because it's amazing. You can spend 3 hours like messing around and get nothing done, or a focused hour, you can really get some writing done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I've written more than half of the African birds for Merlin, which has been
really wow.
Lots of work, but lots of fun, and it has been this like weird virtual travel around Africa. And so I just wrote my last one yesterday, and the last batch I did of like 150 birds was basically all the. Sorry, can you hear that?
Oh yeah, I know exactly who that is.
Yeah.
Da-da.
Our house is so small that it's just impossible. There's nowhere to go.
Oh, he wants his dada.
He wants some attention. Okay, well, I'll try to reboot that. Yeah, so the last batch of things I was writing was basically all the least known birds in Africa that had just been, slipped through the cracks and very like Somali endemics and Upper Guinea stuff from Liberia or whatever. Almost everything on this list was unrecorded in Zeno-Canto, so it's actually probably most of the birds in the world that aren't on Zeno-Canto. So just digging into and researching these birds was a lot of fun, and usually I was.
You know what? One of the things that's really stuck in my mind about this whole exercise of writing is how many species there are that are incredibly little known. It's not just Africa. In New Guinea, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Even in the Philippines, which is so dense and pretty well studied, there's species there with no photos, no sound recordings, unknown vocalizations, unknown breeding habits. It's just amazing to me that in this day and age, there's so little known about so many species still.
Indeed, I had the same impression. Like, wow, it's really not that hard to contribute something significant. I mean, so
yeah.
As far as what I've been up to in the last week, we did a little family trip to the beach, and one day I did a boat trip to access a fairly remote area and just explore a little bit. And it was quite nice. There were some crowned lemurs there and some nice dry forest. But we found this big, huge fruiting fig tree, which was just loaded with Madagascar green pigeons. And I just recently realized that Madagascar green pigeon isn't on Zeno-Canto. For people who don't know, Zeno-Canto is this repository of bird vocalizations, and basically tens of thousands of different people have contributed, and it's covered virtually every bird on Earth at this point. But there were no recordings of Madagascar green pigeon. And so I actually managed to get the first ever recordings of Mad green pigeon at that tree because they were quite vocal. And that was quite exciting to feel like you're contributing something.
Yeah.
It's something very small, but it's satisfying.
It's amazing. You and I have both been sort of putting a lot of bird photos on social media, on Instagram, what have you. With the amount of bird photographs taken constantly, it's just, I wish that would be my big message to anybody who's getting into bird photography: is go and take some pictures of birds that don't have a lot of photographs taken of them. Go exploring, and it just really, because having photos and videos and sound recordings to listen to, it really aids a lot in writing these things, and it gives you an extra level of knowledge about these things. So, with it being such a popular pastime now, bird photography, it has the potential to increase the knowledge of species a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things I've been doing during the pandemic is just going through my old photo libraries and pulling out stuff that I hadn't ever photoshopped. And I'm focusing much more at this point on stuff that I haven't photographed before, or that I haven't put any photos online, and that few other people have as well. Rather than another frame-filling zebra shot or whatever, I'd much rather, some green bull or something is actually a much more meaningful contribution from my perspective.
You know what? I'm a sort of a big e-birder. I e-bird everything. I'm e-birding every day. But I recently, maybe 3 years ago, I started putting all my photos on eBird. And what I liked about that was that it kept count of how many bird species you've photographed, which is fantastic because it's quite a tricky thing to sort of just count them up yourself. And I recently passed 3,000 species photographed.
Wow, that's impressive.
Which is quite a lot, yeah. And but I've got a friend who's he's photographed about 3,200. So that's one of my projects I'm working on is to get past him to photograph more. This is our buddy Scott Watson, who's I think he just brings out the competitive nature in people. But I'm just desperate to photograph more birds than him and then kind of rub it in his face a little bit.
I think you're quite likely to lap Scott anytime because he's sort of confined to Canada most of the time these days. Although you're confined to Thailand, so
I'm pretty much confined now as well.
The playing field is level. Yeah. So I guess we haven't actually told folks what this episode is going to be about yet. We cast about for various ideas, and we decided that we're actually going to kick off yours and my top 10 lifetime mammals in a similar vein to what we did with the birds, which a lot of people seem to enjoy. So
yeah, a lot of people seem to enjoy that. A lot of people were sort of saying, I'd seen sort of 4 or 5 of your top 10 whatever, so it'll be interesting to see how many of our top 10 mammals people have also seen.
Yeah, for sure. Nobody said they'd seen all of either your or my top 10 birds, which was interesting. And one person told me that they'd only seen one of your and my combined top 10, which was 20 different species. So and they traveled a lot, so that was quite surprising.
Yeah.
But in that vein, I guess we actually inspired one of our listeners who started listening to the podcast early on to compile her personal top 10. And she actually wrote up little stories for all of them, like a sort of a paragraph and a photo. And it was quite cool. I was quite, it was kind of humbling to inspire somebody else to do something like this because she obviously
it's nice. She sent through the stories to us and we got to read through them. So yeah, that was very nice. So
I actually got her permission to read some excerpts from one of her stories, which was one of the birds from your top 10, which was horned guan. So she saw this in Guatemala. She says, "The most difficult, strenuous, arduous attempt to see a bird I have ever endured." That's consistent with what you described. "We were driven up to roughly 5,000 feet, which meant we would have to climb over 3,500 feet up to the top of the mountain to see the bird. The trail was treacherous and at an extreme grade with switchbacks every 20 feet. The higher we climbed, the thinner the air and the more difficult it became. We stopped to catch our breath every 40 feet. We reached the top in 2 hours, exhausted but thrilled to have made it. It took another 2 hours before our guides heard the low, booming calls of the guan, who eventually flew into view over our heads and landed across the valley into a tree." I can imagine the adrenaline.
Yeah.
"We raced around the valley on this small, treacherous, narrow trail, hoping not to fall off the cliff to our left and make it in time to get some wonderful views and photos." Or made it in time. "After the elation of seeing our target bird came the sobering reminder that we now had to climb back down the mountain, an almost more difficult task as we feared slipping and falling to our death. I've never worked harder for a bird in my life." At least they didn't have to do the whole thing 2 times as you did, since you left your camera.
Yeah, they didn't have to do it twice.
But yeah, I quite enjoyed reading these stories, and she's quite a good writer, and that was fun.
That's brilliant. Can I mention something about our podcast last week?
Yeah, go ahead.
So on social media, we shared some information about the podcast, that we had our friend Phil Sean, and one guy listened to it and he said, oh yeah, really enjoyed it. I think I heard somebody opening a beer in the background. just towards, he's a pretty laid back dude, Phil, but just towards the end of the podcast. And I know this very well because I was editing the sound on the podcast. And I had to make the decision whether to leave, because the way we do it is we all have our separate recording devices, and then we all kind of pool them and we synchronize them. So I sometimes, if there's a background sound or whatever, car driving by, I'll sometimes cut that out. So I had to make the decision whether to cut out this sound of this obvious can of beer being opened in the background. But
Easy choice.
I thought, oh no, I'll just leave it in. I'll leave it in, see if anyone notices. And then this good friend of ours called Dave, down in Texas. We've known the guy for years. Those tropical birding guides that go down and do the projects in Texas always hang out with Dave. It's a lot of fun. Always have a lot of beers and some food with him. Yeah, and he said, he noticed this beer being open, so we thought he deserved some sort of some prize for noticing that.
That was impressive. Good ears, Dave. To be fair to Phil, I think it was like 9:30 at night or something when we recorded this podcast. So it wasn't 8 in the morning. It wasn't a breakfast beer.
It's the morning for us.
So let's see. Okay, we wanted to ask our listeners if they have a preference as far as, we've done different things so far. We've done these top 10 lists. We've done some interviews. We've done, I guess, episodes on different themes where we went back and forth on different themes, and just if people have any preference among these different things, or whether they're just happy that we mix it up. We're happy to get any sort of feedback from people about that. And we also wanted to quickly mention our School of Birding again, schoolofbirding.com. We have some great tutorials there. Had quite good feedback from people about my tutorial, which is about how to study for a birding trip. I know yours is very good, Charley. Not that many people have watched it, but hopefully the word will spread. You did one about bird listing using eBird.
Yeah,
and
I think I think it's more applicable than most people. A lot of people might think, it's not really for me, but it's I talk about a lot of different things, use of eBird and all that kind of thing. So I think a lot of people will find it useful. We're actually going to be starting work on our second tutorials fairly soon, so we'll keep you posted about that.
Yep, some new material will be coming, and so even if some of the first ones didn't appeal to you, there might be some different stuff coming. I'm quite keen to see Daniel's about birding with a camera. I think that could be really interesting, because it really is how a lot of birding happens these days, and it'd be good to see what he comes up with.
One other thing I wanted to mention, I've been invited to take part in a live online birding event with Swarovski. So that is going to be on the 18th of October. So I'll be able to mention it again on next week's podcast, but just put that date in your diaries, 18th of October, and you'll be able to do a bit of virtual birding with me and several other people dotted around the world.
Does anybody actually have a diary anymore, Charley?
Well, I meant sort of, diary in inverted commas. A diary app on your phone.
Dear Diary, today I should listen to Charley doing virtual birding in Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's in sort of 11 days. All right, I think we got all that stuff out of the way, and we can actually kick off Charley's top 10 mammals. I'm excited for this. And like the birds, I haven't seen, let's see. Yeah, more than half of these I haven't seen. So it'll be gripping stuff. So let's just kick things off with Charley's 10th of his top 10 lifetime mammals, which is Baird's tapir in Costa Rica.
So for those of you that don't know what a tapir is, it's this very kind of prehistoric looking mammal. It's actually somewhat related to horses and rhinos. They're in this order Perissodactyla, which is also known as odd-toed ungulates. Horses have 1 toe, rhinos have 3 toes, tapirs have 5 toes. So there's currently, I think, about 4 species. There's 3 in Latin America and then 1 in Asia. And the first one I ever saw, I've actually seen all 4 species. No, actually, I've seen 3. I still haven't seen the Malayan one. But the first one I saw was in Costa Rica. I may have mentioned in the past that I did a big 2-year plus birding journey expedition around Latin America, starting in Mexico. And I worked my way down through Central America, and I spent probably about a month in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is it's a magical place. It's absolutely amazing. They've done a wonderful job of promoting themselves. A lot of US birders spend time in Costa Rica. It's one of the first sort of tropical destinations that a lot of people go to. And I had a very, very special time there. So towards the end of my stay in Costa Rica, I visited a place called the Osa Peninsula, a huge peninsula, and it's got the biggest extent of forest, a sort of lowland forest left in Costa Rica. And there's a national park there called the Corcovado National Park. I was looking for birds when I was there. I was looking for a few rare birds, but it's also a wonderful place for mammal watching. And I saw a whole bunch of very, very cool mammals for the first time. There's different ways to get into the park. There's no roads. And I was told when I was looking into how to get in there, they said, if you're very wealthy, you can fly in. If you're fairly wealthy, you can take a boat in. And if you've got little money, then you can walk.
No-brainer.
And that was a bit of a no-brainer for me. And, I was pretty fit at the time. And I said, how far is it? And he said, it's 20-kilometer walk. And I thought, that's fine. I've done 20 kilometers. But the 20 kilometers was along a beach.
Huh.
And as many people would know, walking along sand
it's tough.
Is a lot more difficult than walking along a road or on a forest trail, whatever. It's, you're losing purchase, and you're having to put a lot more energy into walking. It's pretty tiring. And also on top of that, you're often, exposed to the hot sun. There's no shade. And we were going to go in there for about 4 nights, I think. So I took my tent and sleeping bag, cooking gear, food for 4 days. So I had a good chunk, I probably had a 50 pound backpack on. And we set off. And there was some of it was along sort of trails along the coast. Other bits, apparently, it could get cut off because there were these little rocky headlands, and you couldn't get around them at high tide.
Right.
You just have to sort of wait. So we were sort of hoping for low tide and get around. And I don't know how much water I took. I may have taken about 3 liters of water, but it was so hot and so tiring. And also the beach, it was sort of on an angle, and walking on a sort of diagonal beach for long distances
dreadful,
it's dreadful. You almost want to walk backwards half the time just to sort of even things out, But it was horrendous, and I was just sweating and sweating and sweating, drinking all my water. And about halfway through, I'd already gone through my water. And just towards the end, I think we had some people sort of hiking the other way. And I think one of them was a local guide, and a ranger, and he had a machete. And I still had a couple of kilometers to go, and there was a palm tree, and I was staggering, and I think he'd maybe cut some coconuts down, and we were walking by, and he said, you want a coconut? And I was like, yes. Please. Anyway, so he sort of chopped into this coconut. I don't know if people have seen that, where they get a machete and they just sort of chop bits off the top, and then they sort of cut into it, and then you can just drink this thing down. And I think still to this day, it was the most delicious thing that I've ever drunk. It was just amazing, and because it's sort of isotonic as well, your coconut water, and it just really energized me for those last mile or two of the hike. But I ended up at the main camp of Corcovado National Park, and we spent probably about 3 or 4 nights there. And it was amazing. It was just in the middle of nowhere. You imagine 20 kilometers to get in there, and all around there, there's just pristine habitat and just, really amazing mammals. We saw probably 4 species of monkeys. There was capuchins, spider monkeys, howler monkeys, squirrel monkeys. We had tamandua, which is like a sort of
nice.
Small anteater, which was nice. We had coatis, agoutis, just all sorts of stuff. It was just amazing. And a lot of these things I was seeing for the first time. I had seen collared peccaries before, which are often in, pairs or small groups. And I'd learnt about this other species of peccary, which is like a wild pig, called the white-lipped peccary. And they have often been sort of persecuted and shot because you get them in big things and people can just, shoot a lot of them. So they're much rarer. But another thing about them is they don't tend to run away. They sort of stand their ground, and they'll actually attack people. And if you get chased by these peccaries, they're a fair size and they've got these kind of little tusks, and they can really make a mess of your leg. They probably wouldn't kill you, but they give you a really nasty bite.
Yep.
And the thing to do if you come across white-lipped peccaries.
No.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing. I've only come across them 2 or 3 times. But anyway, so we came across. Oh, anyway, so there's a verb. So tree, is a tree, but tree can also be a verb, and to be treed means that you get chased up a tree by some animal. Yeah.
Right.
So I think I might have met somebody that had been treed by these peccaries. And then of course we hiking around there, I came across this big herd, like a big group of white-lipped peccaries. There are probably 50 of them. And they sort of came across the trail just in front of us, and I heard all these clicking noises. And some of maybe the females and the young ones, they just shot across, and then the males kind of stayed put. And then all the other ones started to come out, and they started to come towards us on the trail. It was amazing, And then I was like, we've got to get up a tree. It's the only thing we can do. So we looked around, saw a tree with a low branch, and just hoisted ourselves up. And these things kind of were coming towards us, clicking away. And
what's the clicking? What kind of clicking sound?
I think it's just like I guess their teeth or these little kind of tusks. They kind of touch each other, and they can do. It'd be like like a bill snap with birds, but they just sort of snap their mouth shut, and it clicks their sort of their teeth or their little tusks together.
Maybe
and they do it as
like a contact call, just the group staying together in the undergrowth.
Well, no. It's an aggressive thing. It's sort of to intimidate.
It's a signal that you need to tree yourself.
Yeah, you need to get up a tree. So yeah, I thought this was just amazing, being treed by these wild animals. I just loved it. Anyway, so we were sort of birding around there. There was just some amazing birds, one of which will play as a natural sound later on, which is a bellbird, the 3-wattle bellbird, which is just an amazing sort of otherworldly looking bird. But anyway, so late one evening, I'd heard that these Baird's tapirs were around the area, and they would often come out at night on the grassy runway to sort of graze at night.
Where the rich people land.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we were walking along a trail by a river, and it was late, and we were maybe half an hour's walk from camp, and it was just starting to get dark, but we just thought we'll just sort of stay out a little bit longer. And I think we were I met another couple of backpackers, and we were just sort of sat there looking over the river. And then all of a sudden, we heard this kind of rustling. And then this huge tapir, and they're huge. They can be like 6 feet long. They can weigh up to sort of 800 pounds or whatever. They're immense animals. They're only, apart from humans, their only sort of natural predator would be like a jaguar,
Right.
And I heard this thing, and then all of a sudden, this huge animal, it was at a distance. It might have been 100 meters away. We were just looking upstream, and this animal just sort of charged out and sort of jumped into the water. These things love water. They're very at home in the water, very accomplished swimmers. And this thing just shot out and started swimming across. And then and these things hadn't seen us. Normally when you see a tapir, you're in a car and they're sort of running away or moving away. They had no idea that we were there. And then another one shot out and then jumped in as well. And they're sort of doing laps of this river. And then they would sort of climb up onto the bank and then go inside the forest again. And then they'd shoot out again and then jump into the water. And they did this probably 3 or 4 times. We were watching them for probably 20 minutes, just, finally in the twilight. And it became clear that they were just doing this for fun. They were just fooling around. And it was just such a special moment that you could observe this kind of behavior and see this amazing animal that I'd only dreamt to see one day. And it was just incredible. And that time that I spent inside that national park walking around, it was a very special time.
It sounds like an amazing place. Just so wild and remote.
Yeah, there's really not that many places, especially in Central America. It's and just the fact that you had to hike in that far, it really made a big difference. Because normally, you'll get little surrounding villages, and there's always hunters around, and the amount of mammals around really goes down a lot when you get close to human habitation. So yeah, it was wonderful to get in there and see, a lot of different mammals.
Wow, that's a great story. That I can only imagine the next 9, because that's quite a good story. So, and if that's just your number 10, lots of good stories. Although you kind of snuck in white-lipped peccary. I'm not sure. Should that be number 11?
Yeah.
11?
You noticed that was gonna be in there, but I thought no, I'm gonna try and sneak one in here.
10.5. The only neotropical tapir I've seen was this. I don't know if it was a pet or it was habituated. My guess is it was probably taken by hunters and then raised in a village in Bolivia.
Where was this?
In Bolivia, yeah. It was just walking through the village at dusk one night, and this bloody tapir just walked up to me. This like 800-pound animal. It was although it was definitely semi-domesticated, it was amazing, and it would actually wanted to be petted. So it's kind of like nuzzled up against me, and I sort of patted its head.
Did you feel? Did you touch the skin?
As I remember, it was very rough, almost like wire.
But it's like rock solid, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
I've also come across one of these tame tapirs. There was another thing. I think sometimes the story that they always give is, the mother was killed by a jaguar, and then took care of it. But I'm always a little bit skeptical about that. It's more like a hunter killed it and then took the thing back home and sold it or whatever. But there was one in Peru at Manu Wildlife Center, and I saw this thing, and I thought it was a wild one to begin with. And I was looking at it, I was like, oh God, amazing! Yeah, this is my first lowland tapir from South America. And then it kind of walked into this clearing around the staff quarters, and it just walked up to the back door of the staff quarters. And I think they fed it like papaya every night. But this thing had been sort of raised. And I went up and I petted this thing, and it was just rock solid. It was absolutely rock solid. And this particular individual, it lived wild, during the day, and at nighttime it would just come and see the people and eat some fruit or free fruit, whatever. But this thing had actually been attacked by a jaguar. So it had these jaguar claw marks down its flanks. So it's still, you can say, it's a tame individual, but I mean, it still managed to escape from a jaguar, so I think but they can really move, eh?
Yeah, they can. It's actually, it raises the question, when I don't know the answer to this, why have tapirs not been widely domesticated? Because they seem quite domesticatable, given what I've seen of Malayan tapirs in South America. Yeah, and it seems like it would be a fantastic animal to domesticate, tons of meat, and but there must be something in their nature that it doesn't work. I have to do a bit of research on that. Or if anybody listening...
But I mean, there's other wild birds that are also kept as pets. You go to little Amazonian communities, they'll have like a trumpeter bird or macaws or whatever. So they do keep these wild birds as pets, but then they don't breed them. It's a lot easier for them just to sort of take a young one from the wild and then keep it as a pet rather than rear it yourself.
Sure. But the process of domestication of the animals that were domesticated must have looked a lot like that, and then it led to these things propagating in captivity. But it just never seemed to happen with tapirs. It's certainly not on a very large scale, and it makes you wonder why. Yeah. Well, I want to see a tapir now. I want to see some more tapirs. But
they're amazing. I've seen 3 species now. I've had the Central American, the mountain tapir from the Andes, and then also the lowland tapir. And the only one I've got left is this Malayan tapir. So that is really one of my most wanted mammals.
Yeah, that's a great one. It's arguably sort of the most attractive one too, right? It's black and white. It's a really striking beast.
The young tapirs, all of them have these, instead of all the Latin American ones, they're all like a grayish color, or blackish or grayish. But the young ones are always like brown with these little stripes and like patterns on them. And they look absolutely adorable, these young tapirs.
It's camouflage, I guess. Cool. Well, let's move on to number 9. I'm not sure we're going to get past number 9 today, but that's all right. We got lots of good episodes in the future. So your number 9 lifetime mammal is red and white giant flying squirrel in Taiwan. I haven't seen that one, but I've seen a few of these other big Asian flying squirrels, and they are absolutely amazing animals. They're the kind of things, they're like, they fly under the radar. You're not even thinking they're going to be particularly amazing, and then you especially see one fly, and they're just incredible.
Oh, yeah. So I know you've spent just a few days in Taiwan, right?
Right, just around 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. Oh, because you did a tour there, right, as well.
Yep.
So Taiwan's a very special place for me. I think I've sort of gone on about it a little bit in previous podcasts, but I feel a great affinity for the place. I just love Taiwanese people. I love the food. I love mountains, eh? And the place, it's not a huge island, and it has these huge mountains, like 4,000-meter mountains. You'll have to translate that for me. What is it, like 13,000 feet, something like that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So within the width of like what, less than 100 miles, you got mountains that are going up to 13,000 feet. So it is a precipitous, rugged island.
And it was, the old name that was given to it was Formosa, which came from sort of beautiful. And it really is a stunningly beautiful place. And the majority, it's got quite high population density, but the majority of people live down on the plains. So you go up into the mountains and you can get up into these beautiful wilderness areas with stunning mountain scenery, pine forests, broadleaf forests. And there's some really amazing stuff up there. So it's one of my favorite tours to lead. I've led many Taiwan trips, and I never get bored of the place. I just really love it. And one of the main destinations we go to is called Da Shui Shan. And Da means big, and Shui means snow, and Shan means mountain. So it's like the big snowy mountain. And it's a really spectacular place. And you stay up there in this, it's like a big, what do they call it, a national recreation center, but a really nice big
government-run lodge.
Yeah, and it's above, I think it's above 3,000 meters. It's probably about 10,000 feet up. So at night, you get this beautiful, crisp mountain air. It's quite cold. The place we stay at, they don't do central heating pretty much anywhere in Asia.
No.
But what they have in this place is piping hot showers and electric blankets. You would sort of put your electric blanket on, and then you take your clothes off, and then get in this piping hot shower, and then you'd sort of turn it off and dry yourself quickly, and then just run across this freezing cold room, and then jump into this like pre-warmed bed. The log cabins that we stay up there, you're just surrounded by all these noises of the night. You got frogs calling, you got little mountain scops owls, and all these sounds that you've got no idea what they are. And the sound of this flying squirrel. So this flying squirrel is normally found at with a bit of elevation, and it sounds like a squeaky toy. Imagine like a little rubber toy that a dog's got, and yeah, and that's what these things sound like. So you're just lying in your little warm bed there with the cold air around you, and then you hear these little squeaky toys sort of going off in the trees, and I just love it. It's just so atmospheric, eh? And another thing that I love about Da Shui Shan is I think it's like is it a 50-kilometer road up from the local town all the way to the top. Yeah, I think it's 50 kilometers.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, all forested. It's one of the best night drives anywhere in Asia. It's amazing. I like nothing more than to go and take people on these night drives. And you see two species of flying squirrels, often very close, and their eyes really shine out at night. There's these little barking deer, these Reeves mudjacks along there. There's these little mountain goats called the Taiwan serau. And then you can get like masked civets up there, and you can get these hog-nosed ferret badgers and mammals that you've never even heard of before.
Yep, ferret badgers are amazing. It's so funky.
Yeah, but on a 1 hour drive, it's non-stop. You might see 10 serraus and 7 flying squirrels and 5 every 5 minutes or so you're seeing something else. So it's really special. And these things, just to describe them, they look the same sort of size and shape as a lot of the other giant flying squirrels. So they have a sort of rufous back and tail, and then they have this bright snow white head and underparts. So they're really striking. And you often get really good looks at them when you're going on these night drives, or even just walking around the cabins. You can see them, and they're just amazing. They're just so distinctive and just so full of personality. And if you're lucky, you can see one flying. And these things are, so it's like a meter from the end of the tail to the tip of the nose. That's over 3 feet long.
Yep.
And they open out wide, and these things are just enormous. I don't know. They're like maybe 2 feet wide or something like that. They're just enormous.
The surface area of those wings is just astounding. It's like a pterodactyl or something. It's just it looks big on the ground or in a tree or whatever, but when they fly, it's just astoundingly huge looking. That's my experience of these giant flying squirrels.
And they'll fly for forever. They'll climb to the highest tree, and then just jump off, and they'll go like.
Oh yeah, like hundreds of meters. Yeah, I mean, in Sundaland you have incredibly tall forests, incredibly tall trees like way over 100 feet tall, and you see one glide off one of those big trees, and you can just go for like 200-300 meters, like no problem, because they go all the way down to the bottom of another tree, and then they climb up, and yeah, just crazy animals.
But it's just wonderful. I never get tired of seeing them. I just find them incredibly beautiful, incredibly fascinating, and just the real great representative of that really amazing night soundscape of the mountains. It just reminds me of really my favorite night drives that I go on, and it really takes me back. So it's quite a special mammal for me, that one.
I mean, it's probably the most colorful of all the flying squirrels too, right? It's quite a gorgeous animal.
I think it's the best looking squirrel, to be honest. Yeah, I think it's the best looking squirrel in the whole family.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a photo up on the photo gallery for this episode. Look for the link in the episode description. All right, well, I guess we have just about enough time to do your number 8.
Yeah, go on.
All right, so so number 8 is Indian rhinoceros in Nepal.
Ever since I can remember, I've been into birds since I was a kid, maybe 7 years old, 8 years old, maybe even 6 years old. But when I was very young, I was probably a little bit more into mammals than I was into birds. And then just going out into the wild all the time, you just see more and more birds and not as many mammals. So just very slowly I became more into birds than mammals. But when I was young, the thing that I wanted to be in life was a rhino biologist. That was my dream I was absolutely obsessed with rhinos. We had to do a little presentation in classes when we were probably like 12 or something like that. Anyway, I did like a 20-minute presentation on rhinos. So I was drawing diagrams of the lip shapes of rhinos and what they were eating and where they were found and how many were left, and boring to death my whole class, and probably opening myself up to ridicule for months afterwards. But I was just obsessed. I was absolutely obsessed. And there will be another rhino closer to my number 1. But the Indian rhino. It's the largest rhino in Asia. It's sometimes called the great one-horned rhino. And it looks like a tank.
Yeah.
It's got these armor plates. These sort of big metal plates you wear when you're going jousting or something like that. These big round plates that sort of articulate between each other. It looks like it's been clad for battle, this thing. I mean, it's just enormous.
Yeah, to me it looks like a jousting war horse. And for whatever reason, far more than the African rhinos. The African rhinos are much smoother. They're very formidable in their own right. But those Asian rhinos, it really looks like armor.
It's armor plating. Yeah, they're just amazing. Anyway, so I was always desperate to see a rhino. And when I started traveling, doing big overseas trips, it was like during university, I did some trips to Mexico and to India and other places. And then I think after university, I spent a year traveling around the world. I did a 12-month round-the-world trip with a couple of buddies, which was pretty awesome. But we found ourselves, we were in India for a couple of months, and then we went up to Nepal. And I really wanted to see the Indian rhino. And there's a national park in Nepal called Chitwan National Park. Was supposed to be one of the best places to see it. Yeah, I'd actually had a friend that had been there, and he said, you sort of walk around inside the national park, and there's these ladders that have been sort of nailed to the trees. And if you come across one of these rhinos on foot and it charges you, you climb up these ladders on the trees. And I was just, I was like, oh my God,
wow,
that sounds absolutely amazing. I want to be treed by a rhino.
Essential tourist infrastructure, rhino ladders.
And I heard, you had a good chance of seeing them when you were there. And anyway, so I found myself in Chitwan, and I arranged with a local guide to take us in on foot. And I ended up with another couple of, 3 or 4 backpackers that were not interested in birds or whatever. And they were, totally unimpressed by whatever they were shown. And I was just in awe of everything. But the local guide, when we were just about to go in, he gave everyone this talk on safety before we went in, and I've never forgotten this, and I've told hundreds of people about this talk.
I don't think I've heard this.
It was instructions to do when you come across various dangerous animals. And, there's a lot of different stuff. There's bears and tigers and wild dogs and elephants and rhinos and all sorts of. And I remember, I think if you came across a sloth bear or whatever, you were supposed to kind of climb up a tree. If you came across a tiger on foot, what they told you to do was just maintain eye contact, stay together as a group, and then take one step forward, two steps back. One step forward, two steps back, and then just slowly sort of back out of the situation. But then it came to the rhino. They said, this is what you do if you come across a rhino. Say if there's trees, you can climb a tree, of course. If there's no trees, because often you get them in grassland as well, you can run, but you must run in zigzags. And because they haven't got very good eyesight, if they do see you, they'll sort of charge towards you. But if you change direction, they might not see it when you change direction. But they do have a very good sense of smell. They advise that you sort of would run, and when you change direction, take off one item of clothing and then throw it on the ground. And there's a chance the rhino would sort of start and then
sniffing
kind of
this thing,
that.
right?
Yeah, so you could sort of go along, and then you could zig, and then drop your hat, and then and then run along, and then zag, and then sort of take your shirt off or whatever like that. And of course, if this went on too long, you'd probably end up with not much on. But anyways, I was very amused, and I never forgot that piece of advice about when you confront a rhino.
It's like speed strip poker.
Yep. So we spent the day going around. I think some people had been on safari in Africa, and they're saying, oh, this is not interesting, whatever. They weren't aware that it's more difficult to see mammals in general in Asia. But we saw lots of interesting stuff. We stopped in the middle of the day at a river, and this river, it's sort of split into two with a little island in the middle. And they said, oh, you can swim in here or just sort of bathe, whatever, cool off. And I said, are there any crocodiles in here? And said, oh, on the other side, it's a bit deeper water, so you get crocodiles over there, but not over here.
It's fine.
I was taking the word of this local guide that I wasn't going to get eaten by crocodiles. And I've still got a picture of me sort of bathing in this river in Nepal. But anyway, so this is a bit of a non-story, really, because I didn't actually see rhinos that day.
Oh, really?
We did actually see tigers, a tiger.
Oh, wow.
And almost everybody that went there saw rhinos, and almost nobody saw tigers. So we sort of got it the other way around. And the tiger thing, I'll just mention very quickly, because this is not in my top 10, but
is this 8.5?
it may be. Yeah, we heard this tiger roaring. And what they do is they roar at the ground, and it's sort of, the sound spreads, and you can't tell where it's coming from. And they do this to sort of scare their prey and get them running around in different directions. So we heard this big booming tiger roar, and then all these like deer like running around panicking. And then we just sort of sat on this little hill. And then just through this gap, I just saw this tiger just walking. We were on foot, eh? We saw this tiger just walking through this gap,
wow.
Which is pretty
Amazing.
cool. But yeah, anyway, not to go on too long, I did not see Asian rhino, and I didn't actually get to see them until about 20 years later, which kind of rings a bell from some of my birding
Yep.
top 10.
Deferred
But,
gratification.
Yeah, I finally got to this time to go back to India on a tropical birding tour. And we were in the northeast India in a national park called Kaziranga. And Kaziranga has more rhinos than any other park in the world. I think there's over 2,000 rhinos in that single park. I know you've had some good sightings in there, yeah?
Oh, it's impossible to miss them there. I mean, I've been on one viewpoint and counted 70 rhinos. It's just incredible. I mean, you think of rhinos as being African, but you never see African rhinos in that density. Now, I wonder if you would have 500 years ago, because I think rhinos used to be pretty common. Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. Kaziranga.
But Kaziranga is an amazing place. It could be the best Asian safari destination.
I'm not even sure it's
you think
close.
That's fair to say?
I'm not even sure it's close. I think Kaziranga pretty much blows away other. You do have some wonderful tiger parks, like in central India, but just the overall number of animals that you see is far lower, and you don't see rhinos. And
there's a lot of big open areas and big lakes.
Yeah,
and
huge floodplains,
and viewing towers.
Yep, just in terms of the sheer number, and it's pretty high diversity as well. You have quite a few different species of ungulates and mongooses and otters, and elephants are common, and yeah. It is.
It's just amazing, and the bird is incredible as well. I think I remember seeing 150 species in one day in Kaziranga of birds.
Yeah.
Anyway, so from my first experience in Nepal 20 years earlier, of trekking around and just dreaming of what I was going to do when I saw a rhino and just falling flat and having to wait 20 years until my next attempt, and then getting into Kaziranga, and then they were
Just
everywhere.
everywhere,
They were like vermin. Yeah. And it kind of made the first experience, even though I didn't see them, I felt that I deserved seeing them by the time I got into Kaziranga, because I'd already put in the footwork.
It didn't come cheaply. I'm a little bit disappointed. I
No.
thought the big finish was going to be that you got, triumphantly treed by a big Indian rhino, but
I was
that's
I was dreaming about this. I was dreaming about this for days.
You
just
wanted to be treed.
hoping to be treed by a rhino. But we had some wonderful views in Kaziranga and in Manas. This is in Assam, in the far northeast corner, and it's a very special place. And even though they were so common, they were walking across the road. They were rubbing themselves on trees. They were interacting. There was calves. They were bathing and wallowing in mud and stuff. We saw the whole range of behaviors, and it was really, even though they were so common, it really still was quite a very special experience.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I've never understood the density of rhinos in Kaziranga. And, if any of our listeners has any insight on this, we'd love to hear about it. But the rhinos are so common there. I've never seen anything like that in Africa.
I know India has been very effective in its conservation now. It's really from 20 years ago or whatever, where there was huge poaching of tigers and elephants. They really very effectively, and it can be quite controversial, because I know they say if you trespass in there, because there's local people that have their cattle
Right.
but they say if you trespass in there, you can be shot.
Wow.
There's a no tolerance policy. So if they see anybody, that whether there's a poacher or whatever, they just very effectively work. And you can criticize it, whatever, but it has worked, and it has protected tigers, and it has protected rhinos. So, and the overall interest in wildlife, in photography, in safaris, in birding, in eBird, is phenomenal.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, it's becoming one of the biggest wildlife countries on Earth. I would in some ways exceeding the United States, probably, in terms of just the the hundreds of millions of people who are into wildlife in India.
Yeah, it's impressive, and it's heartwarming to see so many people from years ago, when there was, you went in there, and then it was all full of just foreigners, backpackers or foreign tourists going on safari. You go in there now, it's 99% Indians.
My first time in Kaziranga was actually during an Indian school holiday. So it was simultaneously heartwarming, but also a little bit difficult to deal with. It was just like a Jeep motor derby, and people shooting around at high speed and shouting, and so But you zoom out a little bit and you say, okay, this is a really good thing. The fact that this many people from this country want to go experience wildlife, that's good long term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still puzzled by the rhino densities in Kaziranga. Is that just normal rhino densities, or is it a fact? Because Kaziranga is pretty isolated now.
In writing this habitat book that we mentioned previously, I did a lot of reading about the different habitats, and that Brahmaputra floodplain, that whole area, all that grassland is seasonally flooded, and then the flood water recedes, and the whole place is just covered in silt. And then you get this annual supplement of the soils. They're not depauperate soils that are just sort of weathered and washed away. These things are replaced. You've got sediment that's put in every single year. And there's a huge biomass created from that. You get these huge elephant grass growing on the edges of the rivers, and these very, very productive floodplains. So I think there is a lot of food availability in these places.
I wonder, though, if going back to when India was wilder and had fewer people, if the rhinos would have ranged more widely and then gone down to those floodplains, when they were productive, whereas now they're just perpetually confined to those
just stuck there.
Floodplains. Yeah, it does feel like one of these parks where it's wonderful, but it is surrounded by a lot of people, and there's not a lot of places for the rhinos to go.
It's just an island now. It's isolated,
Yep, a big island. I don't know. I'm sure somebody has some answers on this. I just don't know.
If anybody is looking for a very cool wildlife encounter, then that sort of Assam area, which can be done in conjunction with a Bhutan trip or other Indian trips. It's really very well worthwhile, not just for birding, but for mammals. It's really spectacular.
Yep, it is a spectacular place. Just geographically, I mean, you have this huge river, the Brahmaputra, and a huge plain, but it's relatively narrow, and then it's surrounded on almost all sides by huge mountains, going up to, on the northern side, going up to, well over 20,000 feet. So if you just look at this place like on Google Earth or something, it is just one of the most geographically stunning, spectacular places I've ever been. And so you have all these things going on down in the plains, all these big mammals and tons of birds and lots of migration. And then you just go up into those mountains and it's just a whole different world and you have a whole different set of wildlife. And yeah, it is amazing. That's what I was supposed to be doing in May, was guiding a trip to Northeast India, but
really?
Virus said otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Those are great stories, Charlie. Can't wait for the next 7. Well, actually, can wait because...
Well, it's going to be your... We're going to make a start on your top 10 next week, so looking forward to those as well.
Yep, I haven't finalized my top 10 yet. It's hard. It's hard to narrow it down to 10.
It's very hard, yeah.
We started this concept. We were thinking, maybe we'll just do our top 3 mammals each, and then we quickly realized, no, we have to expand this to top 10. There's just so many. So yeah, I'll finalize that list, and that'll be next week. Is my sort of 8, 9, 10 probably.
So I guess we're ready for our natural sound this week.
Yep.
So the mammals don't make as many sounds as as birds do. Birds are a lot more vocal, but one really special sound from the Corcovado National Park in Costa Rica that I really recall is the 3-wattled bellbird, which I mentioned during that story. So it's a very special sound. I hope you enjoy it. You can hear a lot of other birds calling in the background. Yeah, so that really takes me back to Costa Rica. And this recording, I think, is by Mike Nelson. So thanks, Mike, for that.
Well, thanks for listening, folks, and we will catch you next week.
Yep, see you next week.